Hey, Monica, did you know it's now even easier to listen to Around the Hay Bale podcast?
What? Really? How easy?
That's right. All you have to do is say, Alexa, play Round the Hay Bale podcast.
Playing Round the Hay Bale podcast on Apple Music.
Ooh, we're really fancy now.
Tune in to Round the Hay Bale every Monday at 9 a.m. Central Time.
Welcome to Season 5 Round the Hay Bale. I'm Ann.
Hey, y'all, it's Cayce.
And I'm Monica. Welcome back. Oh, wait. Y'all, I think we have someone else in the studio here.
Someone else? Well, who could that be?
It's me. It's Sandi from Suburban Homesteader Wyoming, Arizona.
Y'all, we are so excited to have Sandi join us on the host panel this season for 11, count them, 11 fun-filled episodes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the opening.
Grab a cup of joe and let's gather round that hay bale. With your hosts, Ann from Andale Homestead, Cayce from Ormsby Farms, Monica from Bland's Promised Land Ranch, and Sandi from Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. Here they are. Hey, y'all, hey.
Welcome in, everybody. We are super excited to be starting off season 5 with a great topic. This season, we are digging in deep to all those topics that maybe we just kind of glossed over in the seasons past. And so this episode, we're specifically getting into the do's and the don'ts of water glassing eggs. And I think that sometimes people don't necessarily understand what water glassing eggs actually means. And so for those of you who are new to this topic, what water glassing eggs is, it's when you submerge clean, unwashed eggs in some sort of like pickling lime and watering solution, okay? And what you're doing is you're sealing off that shell, and they can be preserved for anywhere between 12 to 18 months, guys. This is so awesome. And we're really excited to be talking to everyone about that because I think all of us have either done it in the past or are currently doing it in our homes. So to start us off, let's go with Sandi. I mean, how long ago did you water glass eggs, and what was your experience like with water glassing eggs in general?
Well, it was several years ago when we had more chickens than we have right now. And so you have this overabundance at certain times during the year. And, you give so many eggs away. But what are you going to do so that you have eggs when your chickens aren't laying as much as they would have otherwise? And so I like to use glass jars. Now, I know you can use earthenware, anything but a metal container. Some people use plastic, and the solution has to really go about 2 inches above the eggs so that everything is sealed, and it really can easily let your eggs last for a year.
Well, that sounds amazing. This is my first time of water glassing eggs. I started them in December when my girls started slacking down a little bit. And actually, it came in just the right time because we did have some tragedy. A neighborhood dog came in and took out some of our chickens, and the others were traumatized and injured. And so we didn't have eggs for several weeks. But we still have eggs. So yes, I do use a large glass container and some pickling lime. Now, I saw a couple of people put the water and the lime in the container first and then tried to put the eggs in the container, which the water, it's already full. How are you going to get eggs in there? So my biggest hint at the time was to be able to put the eggs in first and then the ingredients. What did you do, Cayce?
Yeah, I saw multiple different, I guess, people's opinions on how they liked to put it into the glass. Again, I used a half gallon, if I can talk today, y'all. The the old pickle jars, the big old giant pickle jars that the whole pickles came in. when I bought the homestead, this woman left like 9 billion. And I was always thinking, I was like, what in the world did this woman, because you can't can anything in it. And then it was like, dun da da, Cayce, water glassing. But I actually put the water in first. Now, I didn't put a full half gallon of water. I did half of the jar full of the lime solution, and then put the eggs in, because I don't have as much laying hens as everyone else on the panel. So I mean, I only was getting at the time like 4 eggs a day. So that was the easiest way for me to do it. But an interesting thing is that I was reading that the first documented, I guess you could say, recipe of water glassing eggs was in the early 1800s. Like, that was the way that people preserved their eggs back there. It was very fascinating read. And I'm sure we'll leave it in the description box of this podcast if you want to go and just read. But what about you, Monica? How do you water glass? Because I know you and Sandi are really the experts when it comes to it. Me and Anne are the newbies.
Well, it was funny because I had been looking up some different do's and don'ts, if we're talking about what you should do versus what you don't want to do, right? So if you're new to this and you're trying to, you're looking at all the information, here's the first tip on what you do and don't do. First of all, when you want to water glass eggs, don't overcomplicate it and just start. Because if you don't try anything, you don't know if it's going to work for you. So first of all, if you're sitting here listening, it's going, I don't know. It just sounds too much. It's overwhelming. I don't know if I can do all of it. I don't know if I have enough eggs. And where do I get the pickling lime? Or what is this? And what is the hydrated lime and all this? Don't overcomplicate it. Don't overcomplicate it. There are too many complicated things in life. This is easy. This does not have to be hard. It is 1 ounce of pickling lime. You can pick up those little bags of pickling lime at your Walmart. Okay. Yeah. You can go there and get it. Or you can get it online on Amazon if you're an Amazon shopper and you don't like going into public. And you get your hydrated lime, you get your pickling lime, and you get some filtered water, or you get your water from the faucet if you really need to, but you prefer to use filtered water if you can, you a little Brita, whatever you got. Use your filtered water and you just go for it. 1 quart of water to 1 ounce of pickling lime. That's the way I've done it. That's what it says. That's everything I've read. And I'm not stressing over it. Now, another do use a scale. If you have a kitchen scale, make sure you try to get a hold of one of those. And that's going to help you get the proper amount of that 1 ounce of lime. Because if you don't have a scale, then sometimes it's hard to weigh out the proper amount of lime. But just don't overcomplicate it. It is not hard. And there's so many things that they tell you. Make sure the pointed ends are down. Guess what, guys? I don't always put my pointed ends down. Okay. Sometimes my pointed ends are up. Sometimes my pointed ends are sideways. It's just the way it goes sometimes. But you try and you either have a great time with it or they crack and then you don't get any of them. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But the most of the time it works. Like I've done it in a big bucket. And I think Sandi was saying she uses glass. Well, the first time I ever did it, I went like crazy gung ho with it. And I was like, I'm going to water glass 50 eggs and it's going to be amazing. And then I got like this big 5-gallon bucket from like the Home Depot and I filled it up with all the pickling lime and water that I could get. And I'm like so excited. And I put that bucket in a cool, dark place, AKA my pantry. Put the lid on it like I was supposed to, because you're supposed to have a lid that keeps the oxygen from more oxygen from coming in. You don't want a sealable lid. And I threw it in my pantry and I was so excited. And like 6 months later, I went back and I was like, oh, something's stinky in here. Well, I had so many eggs in one bucket that it had started to weigh down the other eggs at the bottom. And there was a bunch of cracked eggs at the back end and they started to rot the other eggs on the top. And it was not a good thing. So all those eggs, probably about, 6 dozen eggs at least, went out to the compost. And we had really great compost that year. So, that's some of the do's and don'ts. I've got some more, but what are your big, tip wise, Sandi, when you were doing it, what's one tip you could give somebody that's new to water glassing eggs? Is there anything you can think of?
Well, one thing I would say is I believe that the solution needs to be cold when you start. That you shouldn't have tap water that's lukewarm or warm water because you think it'll mix better. I believe the solution should be cool at the time. You have your eggs, they've probably been sitting in a basket or on the counter, they're just fairly fresh, and you want to not have two different temperatures that you're putting them in. And I've just found that works really well. For me, I've always pointed the eggs down. I know Monica says that she has them different ways. And I think using a half-gallon jar or a gallon jar is a wise decision. One, it's easy to put on a pantry shelf. You don't have to worry about the weight of the eggs. And one other tip is that when you go to take them out, because they can last a year, but you can use them before a year's time too. Don't think that, oh, I can't use these because it's not a year's time. You always want to really wash those eggs off of that lime solution. And then for me, I always like to break the eggs in a bowl or on a plate and smell them just to make sure they're okay. As when you put them in, if you don't see any cracks, they're clean eggs from your chickens, you really probably won't ever have a problem. And so those are just a couple tricks.
From what I understand, I'm just going to jump right in here because you don't want your eggs to be dirty, like filled with yuck and ookie from the pen, but we don't wash them, right? You brush them, but you still need that coating of the eggshell. Is that right? Okay. All right. I'm getting some yeses and some
Yes,
nods
you need
here.
that bloom. You need that bloom, that protective bloom on that, because the hydrated lime is going to kind of seal off the egg too. It's going to kind of fill in all those extra pores from what I understand. And it kind of coats that bloom a little bit more. And that's what keeps it, I believe, as long as that it lasts as long as it does. It fills all those little extra pores of that eggshell, whereas the eggshell is kind of porous even with that bloom on there, but the hydrated lime kind of gets in there. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sandi, that's kind of why you do it that way. You don't want to brush that bloom off, because if you do, then that lime can actually get into that egg if you wash the bloom off.
That's right. You're really better off just taking the eggs that are clean. There's ways that you can block off where your hens lay at night so that they don't soil those eggs. And especially when you're going to do that, because you don't really want to rub them or anything, because that bloom can go off of it.
Well, okay, so I did rub a couple of them, just a little real light, kind of thing. Are my eggs going to taste like lime? Do they taste that way?
They'll probably be fine if you didn't rub them very much. And that's one of the reasons why you break them separately and smell them. So if it would smell off, you would go, oh, that was probably an egg that I rubbed too much and the bloom was gone and the lime solution went in there. And you just want to be safe, because it's a yucky taste that you wouldn't want.
Right.
Yeah, you'll know.
Okay, good. And so, Cayce, what did you do yours in? I found at a thrift store a big glass, like a big giant cookie jar, but it had the rubber seal at the top, kind of thing. Like a big pickle jar.
I used
so that's what I used.
big pickle jars. The woman that I bought the homestead from had left tons and tons and tons of them, and didn't know what she really used them for until I started water glassing, and they're half gallons. And I have to join in with you, and I got a little nervous when I heard don't rub them, because I rubbed mine just a little bit. But I was watching, because I did all of my research, and I watched videos, and I read the blogs on it. And one person said that the microfiber towel at Dollar Tree was the best one to have for your eggs, because it doesn't scrape or hurt the bloom, but you can wipe off feathers or any little dust in the area. And so I did do that. I tried to make it be the cleanest eggs that I have going in my water glassing. And I have conversations with my hens all the time about being nice, polite girls and laying in cleaner areas. But my turkey, she's like, yeah, I'm a rebel, dude. So I'm going to lay wherever I want to lay, in the dirt and the mud and the straw. So I can't do turkey eggs because I'd really have to scrub them. But yeah, so I use the pickle jar. That's what I use for mine.
Okay, well, I didn't know. You know, we learn as we go, right? I mean, I've never done it before, and I did date the jar. It was in December, so I am excited to be able to try these. Which now it's been long enough that if they were going to be yucky, they would be yucky by now. And but it's just I didn't put any. I didn't know there was anything about pointing. What is the purpose of putting the pointy side down,
It's the air sac, right?
Miss
It
Sandy?
has to do with the
What is
air
the purpose?
sac.
That's my understanding too, that it's the air sac. And though, I mean, I've watched tons of videos when I first started to do that, and you'd see them all different directions. But, you know, if you go to like the universities and stuff and what they recommend when you're water glassing, it really says every single one pointed side down. And so
Okay.
that's what I've just always done. But Monica's had success. It didn't make any difference on hers.
Does it make a difference in like the taste, or is this something that it's just the look of the egg? Because when I gave some of my eggs away to my neighbors, she said I needed to store them, you know, pointy side down, so that when she boiled them or fried them or whatever, the yolk was going to be in the right spot. So, Monica, have you seen any difference in position of your eggs when you water glass?
You know, I'm not sure. I guess the idea is you have the pointy side down so that they last longer. I think it's about longevity, right? So depending
Oh,
on because of the air sac and the position, I guess, you know, water glassing eggs and the length of time you keep them, right? It's about the longevity of that air sac inside of that egg. So I imagine that the proper positioning, that positioning will help the longevity of that air sac. So I guess if I have them upright the other way or sideways, that air sac is going to have more pressure on it from the inside, the yolk and all the things inside of it, right? If the air sac, because the air sac is on the shorter, the baby end, right? What is it? I'm making a curve. Where's the air sac on the egg? It's on the more rounded end, right? It's not on the pointed end, correct? Do you guys know?
Sandy,
Wait,
yeah.
Sandy says yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's like when you are incubating eggs, that's the reason why you put it pointy side down too.
Because so basically the air pressure is going to be
Yeah.
further, that you have the air at the top, so that because the animal is down and all the pressure is, you know, gravity is going to help that pressure stay at the bottom of the egg, right, where the pointy side is. So I imagine that the reason why the pointy side is, and I haven't seen any research on it yet, I was kind of doing a little Google here in a minute to see if I could find it, but the idea is that you're keeping the pressure off of the air sac, and that means that you have longer storage time, because without that pressure on that air sac, you have less chance to rupture that. And once you rupture that, then your egg has the entire the area, the space, all the inside has the space to fill. And I guess at that point, then you've got, I guess it starts to break down a little bit more, you know, inside of it, molecularly or whatever. All the inside starts to break
Oh
down.
my
So,
gosh.
so your yolk will actually just be runnier. It's not going to hurt anything. Here's the thing.
Okay.
You know, Sandy even said, right? She doesn't even brush hers off, right? Cleanest eggs. I am probably the most rebellious here, and I water glass duck eggs out of necessity. And duck eggs are kind of foul, not just because they're birds, but they're kind of grody sometimes. And I try really hard to get duck eggs that are very clean, but there have been many a duck eggs that I have had to kind of wipe off on my shirt or something, kind of get my towel. I mean, I use my apron usually that I kind of wipe it off on the edge where there's something on there. I've put stuff in there that doesn't look 100%. And I take my risks. I take my chances. But again, like Sandy says, the minute I pull it out of that jar, and it's a glass jar, I use half-gallon jars because it's easier for me to keep smaller quantities, but also so that I can watch them. I rotate my jars often and look at them. I make sure there's nothing cracked at the bottom. I'm observant. They stay in a closet. It's dark. It's a cooler place in my house. But I will say that I do water glass duck eggs, which probably a lot of people don't do because they are a little more dirty. But I do that for necessity. We need to have duck eggs available to us all seasons of the year. And because eggs are a seasonal item, I don't want to rely on the grocery store, and you can't go buy duck eggs in the grocery store.
Right.
And so, I do it that way, but I will say I crack them into a bowl. I sniff them. I look at them. I prod them a little bit. And if they look or smell anything other than just a regular egg or an egg with maybe a runnier yolk, because you'll get that over time, the longer they sit, sometimes the yolk will break when you open it up. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that the sack couldn't hold that yolk anymore. Like it was old, like an old egg, right? But it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's older. And as long as it smells good, I use it. But if it smells funky or at all, nope.
Monica, I just wanted to say that I looked
do you
up.
boil?
Well, I was just going to say real fast because she had said that she was going to Google looking at why you keep it pointy side down. And it does say on the good old fashioned Google that eggs should be stored pointy end down to keep the yolk centered and to keep any bacteria as far away from the yolk, which is far more likely to be contaminated by bacteria if you do store it pointy side down. So, pointy side down, meaning because you want to keep it far away from bacteria and to keep the egg yolk centered. So, that made 0 sense to me, but I was just reading it. Basically, store your eggs pointy side down.
Okay, well, I keep going back to Monica saying, don't make this complicated, because all this information is kind of making my brain explode just a little bit. It makes me nervous, but to not make it complicated. And Sandy, you have been such a wonderful array of information.
Well, one thing is, Monica's talking about putting it in her pantry. That's where I store eggs, in my pantry, because it's a cool place. Because you have to have that temperature below 65 degrees. Optimal, if it's possible, is 33 to 45, but most of us can't do that. But usually in a back of a pantry, doors, no lights, doors are closed, you can keep that at 65 degrees or below, and that's really what you need. My one big do not do, if I can just throw that in there, is if you look at some really old videos, there are people that will tell you that you can use lime from a home improvement store. That is a calcium carbonate. That is not the same as pickling lime. And for me, I say never use that. I think it's dangerous. Very old recipes would say 1 part of that kind of lime to 700 parts of water. But some of those videos will tell you 2 to 3 pounds of that to 5 gallons. That is not correct. And I think that can be dangerous. And so I just wanted to throw that out, that's just not something you should do. Pickling lime at the grocery store online does not cost very much money. And that is a safe avenue.
Does anybody put them in the refrigerator? If it's 35 to 45 degrees, I mean, my refrigerator is probably 35 degrees.
Well, I mean, if you were gonna put the eggs in the refrigerator, you wouldn't need to put them in a jar with water and lime, though. I mean, I could put mine.
Well, that would be true.
I could put mine in the refrigerator and they'd be lasting for like a month and a half. I'd be pulling a whole carton of eggs out. Like, when did I put these in here? Oh my gosh, did I wash these? What did I do with these? How did they get here? That's what happens when you don't label things properly. Okay, and really quick, I'm going to correct myself. The air sac actually expands as the egg gets older because air gets into it, which is why old eggs, bad eggs, float because they have more air in them. So anyway, that's why I kind of looked it up just now. I was like, I should have did this before I came on here. But that's why the pickling lime and all that works, because it fills up all those pores and kind of seals them off. But it's also why you should make sure you're storing it down too, to keep the yolk away from that air, because that air sac, because I imagine that the pickling lime is probably going to impermeate, like if it permeates that shell at all, it's going to get into that airy spot first, and kind of seep in. I don't know. Anyway, but I will say, if you're going to do it, keep it simple. Don't freak out. Don't stress over it. I mean, if you're growing your own eggs, right, you probably have a multitude of extras. It's not like you're losing a lot of money if you put 1.5 dozen eggs in a jar and you try it and they fail. And then you try it a second time and it works. So don't overthink it. Make sure you put your pointy sides down. Get an airtight lid in a nice glass container. Put it in a cool, dark place. Get yourself a kitchen scale to weigh out that 1 ounce and to that 1 quart. Make sure you're using clean eggs and use filtered water. Try to use filtered, clean water. And like Sandi said, use cold water. If that's going to work really well, I think that's a great tip because I didn't think about cold water. That's amazing. Do those things. Don't overthink it. Don't use poop covered eggs. Don't clean them and scrub them and make them all pretty, okay? We're not taking them to some fancy restaurant. We're not taking them out. We're not selling them to your sister Mary up the street that doesn't buy eggs from, farmers because they're not clean enough because she didn't get it from Costco. Don't do that. Don't clean them and don't stress. Those are my do's and don'ts too. I feel like we've conglomerated all the information. Cayce, you have something you want to add?
I did, only because I can't remember if it was you, Monica, that I texted the first time that I water glassed eggs. When you mix the solution and you put it in, it is going to look cloudy at first. It's going to look cloudy, but it will set. So don't think that you did it wrong. For the first day, mine looked cloudy, like it was white water. And then when I looked 24 hours later, the lime has settled towards the bottom and it looks like what you would think water glassed eggs would look like. I freaked out at first. So that's the one thing I want to put out to newbie water glassers. You didn't do it wrong. If you followed these directions that we've told you on the percentage of lime to water, you're going to be A-okay. Don't worry. Don't stress out. It's okay, girl. Just relax, honey. Just relax. But that's mine. So I wanted to throw that in there.
Well, I liked what Miss Ann did too, because she did a video on her doing it. And one of the things I really liked about it was that I believe she made up a container. She put her eggs in there. She made up a container and then she poured it in. Then she was like, oh, I need more. So she made up another container and she poured it in. And that's how I do mine. I make up 1 quart at a time because you don't necessarily have these half-gallon jars laying around that you can start weighing things out. I'm better with 1 quart, 1 ounce. Keep it simple. 1 quart to 1 ounce. And if you have to make 3 of those solutions, make 3 of those solutions. Just take your time and just give yourself some grace and know that it's going to be okay. It's just eggs. And give it a good sniff test. Break it into a little bowl before you use it. And just be excited that the potential for you to have eggs in December, when most of around the country eggs are not being laid in December, unless you're, in Florida or in Georgia or South Carolina or North Carolina where they have good temperatures. But yeah, I mean, if you're in a place where you don't normally get eggs during that time of year, be excited because you can have eggs all year round if you water glass them.
That's okay. So I have another question. Being a newbie, all right, I put my eggs in first. I guess you're not supposed to do that, but I did that. And I did the 1 quart at a time. 1 quart, 1 ounce, 1 quart, 1 ounce, until I got them covered a few inches. And the water was cloudy, Cayce. It was. And I was like, oh, is this the way it's supposed to look? I don't know. But now that it has cleared up, the eggs seem to have kind of a layer of white looking lime on them as it went down on the eggs. Is that okay? You think? Probably, Sandi?
Yeah, it's totally okay because it's just this process of them sealing everything around the eggs. It's totally okay. You're
Awesome.
totally fine, Anne.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to enjoy those eggs whenever you want them.
I'm so looking forward to it. Y'all are gonna see. You're gonna see when we do it. That would be great.
Well, I will say that water glassing eggs has been a huge benefit for us because, again, even though I'm a little rebellious and I do duck eggs, which I have successfully done for years now, it is very rewarding to go into your pantry and to use eggs especially when your ducks aren't laying anymore and your husband can only eat duck eggs in his cookies, or you have to make egg-free cookies. And I'm just going to say, finding egg-free recipes, not that easy at Christmas time or, the holidays when everybody wants a little snack or something fun. Being able to make your normal recipes with eggs that you have and not having to go search around the world for duck eggs because you can't, or try to find substitutes. It's a really rewarding and it's a really nice thing to be able to just go into your own pantry, grab your eggs and go for there. And that's the main reason why we do it, because I don't even water glass chicken eggs. I'm like, who cares? We'll eat duck eggs. And so we just go for duck eggs at this point. And I usually keep at least, I try to do at least 5 jars of water glass eggs, and that'll get us through the cold seasons here. Because in Texas, we're not like Sandi where we have a lot of cold. And of course, she sneaks out of Wyoming anyway, so it's not even like she's dealing with all that. But we don't have these long extended periods of cold and non-laying. But there are times where it gets really hot here, and my ducks are like, dude, it's too hot. I'm not laying eggs right now. So even in the summertime, we have a lull in egg production. So it's really nice to be able to have those eggs. So if you're interested in doing it and you're listening to this, don't overthink it. Just try it. And there's plenty of videos online. Again, find the newer ones. Like Miss Sandi was saying, don't necessarily go for the older ones that maybe are a little outdated in their methods. But there's plenty of videos out there, and you can always reach out to somebody, because I know Anne's got one out there on water glassing. So go find some videos and go water glass some eggs.
Yes.
I mean, any other tips or tricks or anything you can think of that we missed?
Not on my end, that's for sure. I do. I am curious. I may have to just go try one just to see. I mean,
It's been long enough.
I wanted to wait 6 months because I think that for some unknown reason, I don't know, my brain just told me that's the time that, it's either going to be really bad or really good.
Mine
And,
too. We're the same brain, Ann. It's okay. 6 months. And you never know, y'all. If you want to see all 4 of us, Sandi, do you have water glass eggs?
I don't right now because, we live in 2 different places. And so my eggs or my chickens get delivered from a friend of mine that they have about 200 chickens. And so I get them for the whole time I'm in Wyoming, and then I give them back to them.
That's the nice delivery right there.
When we go to talk about, when we go to talk about incubating eggs, I'm going to tell you a little fun thing that we're going to do.
Well, that's exciting. So maybe Sandi will guide the 3 of us on one of the lives. We may turn on our cameras and show some water glassed eggs, one of our radio shows. So maybe I'm looking at my host to see if they agree on pulling out a water glassed egg on one of the live radio shows. Yes. Oh, yes. Great. Oh, wonderful. Fabulous. Well, y'all, that wraps it up for this episode of Round the Hay Bale. First episode. We're so excited to have Sandi. We're going to be chatting about incubating eggs next episode. So we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. So we're signing off for this, and we'll see you on the next week's episode.
Are you enjoying the Hay Bale topics? To learn more, click on our LinkTree link to get all of our product recommendations, along with discount codes and more.